Saturday morning live.
Wow.
How goes?
Man, we here, baby.
Yeah, we made it. I'm actually coming out of my basement at home to actually step out and talk to the people.
Oh,
I'm
not from the
excited to be here.
basement. They,
Hey, I'm
they,
in the basement, underground all day.
they call you
And
Batman over there, bro.
rich. Man, I coming out with the fire behind the car and everything. Whole scene. Coming on out.
Hey,
I'm
yo,
here. I'm
that's
here.
crazy, man. Hey, man, welcome to DLW Live, the show, the podcast where generational conversations happen at the intersection of faith and culture for your entertainment and for God's glory. What
Thank you.
up?
Nothing much, man. Blessed to be here. Excited for the topics we about to go into,
Yeah,
and just enjoying everything that's gonna be talked about right now.
man. After the Will Jordan episode, it's a lot of pressure. That
Hey,
was my dog. He came
hey,
up and people were still talking about that episode, man.
let's see. Let's see if I can match. I mean, the only person I'm in competition is with myself, and
Oh
I'm trying to
man,
be the best me every day. So,
man.
hey,
Let me.
let's see if they love it, and if they love it, I love it even more.
Hey, praise God, man. We're gonna have some fun.
Yeah, we
Let me introduce y'all. You know how the tradition goes, man. I introduce my guest, he introduces me. We joke, we laugh, we get serious, and we get into the discussion, man.
right.
This is John Morgan,
Hello, everyone.
my dog, my longtime friend.
We go
I,
way back.
I'll tell you this, man. This is the most controversial.
He not lying.
The most
He not lying. He not
the
lying.
most conversational, the most sensational.
Hey, you know how I do. And some of y'all who probably watching
Hey,
this who
yo.
do know about me and come across some stuff,
Oh
you
man,
already know, like, hey,
I'm telling you, man.
I'm not scared to say what I want to say and say just I'm not scared to say what I want to say.
That hey, that
I'll
he
say
ain't
that.
lying. But I'm gonna give y'all some seriousness. This is my friend, man. He'll tell you he's an Orthodox Christian. He is a husband. He is a film and music critic and an inspiring filmmaker. My dog, John Morgan. Let's give him a round of applause. You gonna clap for yourself?
Hey, yeah, I'm clapping for myself. Hey, give myself some round. Hey, nah, I ain't playing. That's me clapping for
Hey, yo,
Jesus. That's
that's
hey,
crazy.
Jesus, thank you for handing me
Oh
all of
man,
this.
that's love, man.
Thank you. And so, anyway, everybody, me and Darius go back quite a bit.
Yeah, we do.
So I remember meeting him at a Christian retreat we had with the church that I was associated with, and we were having a conversation. Some people were talking about marriage. So
Man.
he chimed in the conversation, and he was, saying his 2 cents, speaking his piece. And then as I started conversating with him, I was like, "Hey, you know what? This is a smart brother, and also that he knows what he's talking about. He expounds on it, and he's very well learned. And I love people like that. People who are able to just, people who are well learned, educated, speak and know what they're talking about. And even if I don't agree with somebody, not saying I disagree with some things we do, but a lot of we do. Some things we do agree on, some things we don't. But for the most part, I have a ton of respect for him. So from my understanding with him is he's a strong disciple. He's a husband, which that's a great thing for us men to do is be husbands. A father, which hopefully I'm gonna be a father myself pretty soon coming up.
Hey,
A
hey.
speaker, an author, a poet, a community leader, the first black man to go to outer space. He
He's
done
so
done
stupid, bro.
he done some of it all. It's like reading off his stuff. It's like I'm talking about like Morgan Freeman. He's
He's so
done it
stupid,
all.
man. He's so
but,
stupid, man.
but yeah, no, this overall, this is a great guy. This is a
Man,
great guy.
that's love.
I'm glad that he's doing this show. I'm glad that he's stepping out there and more like what I'm really happy about is that instead of sitting at home talking about it and like I want to do a podcast, I want to do it, he's stepping out
Yeah,
and making it happen,
yeah,
putting God first and going after it. And I think that's important for a lot of us to do
that's good.
is to actually move in action. Because even when we look at the Bible, our faith, we supposed to have a living faith, make it happen. And
John,
our
John, you're
dreams.
preaching right now, man.
Yeah,
We
we
just
we,
got to get the show
we
started,
gotta
brother.
make it go. Yeah, we
Okay,
starting off
also,
on a high note for people this Saturday morning. Get up,
like,
get your coffee, get your word.
all right, man. I appreciate you, man. You so funny, man. Yeah, man. That's love, man. I appreciate that. It's funny. That was one of our most viewed shorts this past week or so.
Uh-huh.
I was telling them the word of my season actually is move.
Okay.
And so we're actually going to talk about that at the very end. I know that we're really passionate about inspiring others to get up and move. And so we definitely got to talk about that, man. I'm
Okay.
excited about that. But I'll tell you this, man, John, dude, that story, it touched my heart. I really appreciate that. Um, John, one of the things that I love about you and why I appreciate our friendship so much, it really it goes back to for just to give y'all background. Me and John, we attended the same church, the Crossings Church here in the greater St. Louis area, Wentzville, Collinsville now in Columbia. We're a church that is committed to church planning. And I remember John used to attend our sister church out at St. Charles in Wentzville area
Yeah,
at one point.
Winsville.
And then he came over to the church here in St. Louis. And that's when we really began to build a stronger friendship and relationship. And John will be the first to tell you, there were times where it was hard. It was hard. It was hard to be friends together.
Yeah,
It was hard at times in our relationship. I mean, I think at one point we kind of honestly we fell off pretty hard.
yeah,
But man, the thing I love about John and why I love our relationship is because it's a story of redemption. Our story is a story of redemption. That two friends could have disagreements, fall off, go in separate journeys, and yet still touch base, still get connected, eventually come back together. I'll never forget, man. We had a conversation. We continue to kind of touch base at least a couple of times a year. And then we had a conversation. And I remember John saying to me, "Hey, man, I know that you and others were trying to help me. And I know I've been on my own journey. And I wanted to apologize for the ways in which I did things to break our relationship and hurt our relationship. But man, I'm learning, I'm growing, I'm recommitting my life to Jesus. I'm here and I want to rekindle this friendship. And for you to come and say that to me as a man, as a brother, that meant the world and it showed me the power of redemption. And so I cherish our friendship even more now because of the history we have, but also because of the reconciliation. That's a testimony to what we have now too. So I love you, man, and I
thank
just want to say that.
thank you. That means a lot. And as a man, and especially how I am, sometimes that's not the easiest thing to do because you have to have self awareness to realize like, hey, I was wrong. Even though you can easily point like they did this, they did that. Where was I wrong at? What did I do? And then in life, I've had friends and some people unfortunately pass on, and as you get older, things change. So you start realizing some things just aren't that serious to really just be in conflict with people about. And then also as the body of believers and just us as men, good men need to stick around good men.
That's good.
Believers need to be around other believers, and people need to lift each other up. So instead of just saying like, nah, I'm mad, I'm out here, just
That's good.
reconnect, let go of things, because forgiveness is everything, and we
That's
want
good.
good people in our corner. So
That's
thank you.
good,
Like
man.
to bring that up, that conversation, that means a lot. I appreciate that.
That's love, man. And so, man, before we really get into our topics here, John, man, I really appreciate that. That means a lot. Before we get into our topics, we're actually working on a huge project. I've
Hmm.
been telling y'all about it. It's called The Local Show. I'm really, really excited about what we are going to be bringing to St. Louis as we dive into powerful stories of culture shifters here in this area that bring hope and inspiration to and light to stories that and people that you should know about. So John is actually helping produce that. He's helping with camera work and is an aspiring filmmaker. He inspires me. And so, man, I'm really excited for that too, man.
I'm excited too,
It's gonna
because
be great.
just to actually go into this venture, I'm overjoyed to
Yeah,
really be doing this. It's
yeah.
gonna be fun. We're gonna have a lot of fun, and you all are just gonna have a blast.
Let's get it,
Trust me.
baby.
When you see what we got in the pipeline, you can
Hey,
already see
it's about to be wild. Shout out my
editing and all
brother
this. We
James.
got it. We got it coming for you.
Shout out my brother James. All right. Hey, we got some fun topics for y'all today. We're going to talk about Diddy's lawyer getting out.
Oh man, where do we just where do
That's
we
going to be
begin with all of this?
wild. We're also going to talk about icons in the culture. I want to talk a little bit about Beyonce and Taylor Swift. And then we're going to talk about Christian celebrity culture. I think these things are all just kind of fun things that have been happening in our culture recently. And so we're going to get into it. But Diddy's lawyer wants out.
And you know what? It's the same lawyer who defended, what was it, Saddam Hussein, or was it? No, it wasn't Osama like it was Saddam Hussein.
Yeah.
I think he defended him. So this made me think one or two things going listening to that. Because when you a lawyer, you have to.
I was gonna say, wait, before we get into it, John, let's contextualize it.
Okay.
So you were already starting to contextualize a little bit there. Yeah. So this, for those, if you've been stuck in a box, apparently you've been stuck in a box at this point. Diddy's in jail for atrocities, allegedly. I got to say that.
Yeah, allegedly.
Allegedly,
Even
atrocities that involve baby oil, that involve prostitution, abuse, sexual deviancies. Yeah, we got to be cautious of the words we use here.
Yeah. It's some of everything.
PDFL stuff, human trafficking stuff, violence. It's we joke about the baby oil, but it really is disgusting.
It kind of showcases some strong, like,
allegedly.
Yeah, some quote unquote degeneracy or crazy stuff that he's been involved in.
Allegedly. All alleged. All alleged. I gotta say alleged.
It's all alleged, but unfortunately, sometimes where there's too much smoke, there might be some sparks going on.
Where there's smoke, there's fire.
There's fire. Well, not always saying that's the case. Like I said, it's alleged, because I do want to just say, I hope that any victims definitely get their justice. So we will really have to just see where this trial goes and how all this plays out. Because I don't want to just accuse him of things he didn't do. So that's my 2 cents on it before we really get into what's going on here with Mr.
Well, I want to
Bad Boy Records.
Let me contextualize this real fast. Again, if you've been stuck in a box, Diddy is in jail for all those atrocities. And what we're talking about now is one of his lawyers who defended some high profile
Saddam Hussein, I believe. I think it was Saddam Hussein.
Okay. Can you imagine? Just pause for a second.
Okay.
Can you imagine defending Saddam Hussein and then quitting or Diddy?
P. Diddy.
That's crazy. You defended someone who we would consider a world-class terrorist who was on the FBI's most wanted list, but Diddy was too much.
Diddy was just, no, I can't get behind this, man. Like all of that
crazy
to think about that. Like, so when I heard that, this what came to my mind. One or two things. So, like, usually in cases like lawyer proceedings, you have to be the lawyer. You have to tell your lawyer everything. Like, be honest.
Yeah.
Tell me what you did, and they got to defend you. Which these accusations, that's crazy. So this made me think that either the guy heard way too much and in good conscience couldn't support this, or the other thing that causes lawyers to leave is that Diddy lied to him and didn't give full information or made stuff up. So one of those two things happens, but usually a lot of these high profile lawyers, to protect their reputations, if you lie, that's going to make them look really bad. So they'll step out before they let their reputation go down. Then no publicity. Bad publicity, bad publicity is good publicity. So if you see like a lawyer stepping out and like, I'm not defending P. Diddy, and everybody like, oh, he's not defending Diddy, but he defended Saddam Hussein. And that's gonna get the tabloids talking. That's gonna get social. That's going like we doing right now.
It really. I think you're right. I think the reasons why a lawyer wouldn't defend a client, I think, are exactly those two things, right? Either it's personal conviction, right? Too much going on, and they decide to step away. They can't with good conscience because of the content that has come out. The client lies to them. But I think the third one for me is the most valid. It's the reason why I think Diddy's lawyer is leaving is because of Diddy himself. I think it's about Diddy's character.
I can see that.
I think Diddy has a very long history of manipulating and controlling. There's a well-known, I don't know if you've seen the video, where he's talking to, I think, an MTV agent, or he's talking to some sort of TV agent, and he's not taking no for an answer.
Yeah.
Diddy, I can't give you this primetime slot. Diddy's like, no, it's mine, it's mine, it's mine. And then eventually he's like, you know what, Diddy, we'll make it work. Diddy's like, I get what I want, right? That is Diddy.
I keep thinking of that Dave Chappelle making the band skit. Like when
Oh
I'm
my
seeing that,
goodness gracious.
he's just telling the guy, like, "Hey, you gonna give me that prime time slot?" He just get the prime time slot, Playboy. I'm thinking of that the whole time in my head
Yeah,
while that
man.
was being said.
Yeah.
But he is notorious for
He's
that.
notorious,
And
man.
like
And
he's been known for that kind of stuff for a long time
right.
now, actually. Because these accusations, these aren't some of these accusations ain't exactly new.
Right.
Like the one like Jodeci, they were saying they had information on him back in the 90s that could have got him in trouble, but they couldn't because that would have killed their career. Like we wouldn't have got no Jodeci music at all.
Yeah.
They would have been blackballed if they had told on him.
Well, I mean, what the King James say? King James version. Pride cometh before
A fall.
And I really do believe that Diddy's lifestyle, everything that he allegedly has done, has always been at the root pride. It's been control. I believe is a form of pridefulness. It's the feeling that you're entitled to everything. And so I believe that with Diddy, it's always been about control. And so when I look at this lawyer leaving, even with someone like Saddam Hussein, who I'm sure having that conversation with Saddam Hussein and some of the human atrocities that happened with that brother, I think there's a part of that that's, you know what, I can defend someone who's letting me defend them the way that I see this case should go, versus someone like Diddy, who doesn't take no for an answer, who has to control everything, and who has a pride that is unreal. And it's kind of crazy for me to even say Saddam Hussein's pride versus Diddy's pride, to even make a comparison. I don't really know either of these brothers, but I can imagine that lawyer sitting there talking to Diddy and saying, this is what we need to do, and Diddy telling him, no, this is what we're going to do. Him being like, you know what, man, I can't defend you.
Well, you know what's interesting about Saddam Hussein? I think it was when he was on his trial. I can't remember who exactly it was. It was somebody involved, whether it was a lawyer, psychiatrist, or something. I can't remember. But they had to, connect with him to get confessions or get information out of him. So they engaged in conversation with Saddam Hussein, talked about what he liked, really, went there with him to get information. And the guy ended up actually like personally connecting and understanding Saddam Hussein. And so when his execution came, the guy said, I can't watch this happen. Because he got that connected with them. So it kind of makes you think, like, when people like Diddy do these things, or pride or things like that, what's really inside the person? Because most people don't get out of bed like,
Right.
I'm the villain or I'm evil. Like taking it like, what's his name? Like my favorite thing ever, Star Wars. You look at Darth Vader doing all this stuff and you're like, this a bad guy. He just sat down and watched the planet with millions of people blow up and just, it didn't even phase him. And then you go back and watch the other ones, like, oh, he had a family, he had a wife, he had kids, and he messed it all up because of pride, fear, bottling his emotions up. So most people don't get out of bed and just like, I'm a bad person. So even Diddy, I'm thinking Diddy probably didn't start off that way. But if we don't check ourselves and give in to just bad things that's in us, we can go to some pretty dark places. Because I'm sure we don't have as much money as Diddy. I certainly don't, y'all. So don't ask me no money. I don't have as much money or none of that as Diddy does. But to have that kind of money, that influence of those things, absolute power can corrupt absolutely. So I look at Diddy like, I don't ever plan on doing none of that. But if I'm not careful, sometimes the little bit of power influence we do have can take us to some places where we probably be like, what am I doing?
What you're saying kind of poses an interesting question. And I before you answer it, I want to answer it because I'm thinking through it out loud right now. Okay. Why are we as humans obsessed with villains? And I say that intentionally because I think even that question is missing the mark. I think we look at someone like Diddy or even a Saddam Hussein or any sort of stories across history, we think about even comic books, anime,
Movies, everything.
movies, music, right? I don't think it's as much as we love. Um, I don't think the culture loves villains as much as the culture loves a redemptive story. We love stories of redemption. And so we joke about this. Teenage girls wanting to fix the bad guy, or adult women wanting to fix the gangster, the thug dude, and don't
Yes.
want to mess with the nice guy, right?
Uh-huh.
We think about this in terms of in Batman and the relationships he had with his villains, like the Joker, the famous scene in the animated show where Joker and Batman have a moment,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
With Mark Hamill, his incredible voice acting. We think about this in the culture. We think about even like someone like Saddam Hussein. What you just described was a lawyer who saw the humanity in Saddam Hussein during a time where he also had to testify and defend the atrocities, right? There's a redemptive story there in what we receive as villains that people are obsessed with in the culture.
And you know what? I would agree with that, like 100%. I think we often sometimes like the villain because sometimes we can see ourselves in the villain, and the
Yeah.
villain sometimes has the courage to do things that we can't act on. Because
Yeah.
villains and heroes, a lot of times, is stemmed from the same place. Like the hero's journey, there's an inciting incident, a call to action, and
Yeah.
an achievement. The villain just goes in the way that they feel more self satisfying or more
Mm,
self aggrandizing versus what the hero generally does. So, what makes that interesting when you start looking into, why we love the villain, a lot of times they do the things that we sometimes don't have the courage to do. And sometimes some villains may do things that are noble, but they went about it the wrong way.
right.
And we kind of see
Killmonger and
that.
Black Panther.
I don't know if I use that one, but
Hey,
I
that's
have
a lot of people will feel that way.
a lot of people feel that way, but I do have some issues with
Yeah.
him because I felt he was innately kind of selfish.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, I
But I
think.
think but I think that's the piece though, right? I think with heroes, why heroes are important is because it's something to aspire towards,
Mhm.
whereas villains in the connection of their weakness in the worst parts of humanity, we can find that in ourselves. There's also something in villains that we want to redeem, and I think both are essential for human nature. We need to have the figures in the culture who we can look towards and inspire towards, and we need to have the person who we can see ourselves in, that because we want to be redeemed ourselves. I really do believe this is the gospel, right? When you look at someone like Jesus, I'm serious. We look
No,
at someone like
yeah.
Jesus, who is God, but then who is also fully human.
Mhm.
We see someone as God that we can aspire towards, a standard that is worth living, worth striving towards, a humanity that's been perfected, that we know has brought and brings good to this world. But then you see the humanness in Jesus, the moments where he's crying in John 11, right? The moment
Yeah.
where he's being violently destroyed to the cross, and there's a part of us in connection to what he's bearing in the redemptive story of the cross that we also can and do identify with, that I think is also equally and validly human.
You know what? That is a great point, and I actually do agree with that wholeheartedly. And I also think this too. One of the things that I do enjoy about
Mm.
a good villain, is like when you see something like Game of Thrones, when you see Joffrey, or you can think of any villains. When you see a villain that is just detestable,
Mm.
hateable, no good traits, even if they started off decent, they become a monster or something like that. A villain can also be an interpretation or an icon, sort of, just use another word, of something that we should hate, something that we should
Mm.
despise,
Interesting.
and something that we should seek to destroy, suppress, and a clear cut example of what not to become.
That's really
And I
interesting.
think that that's what I like about, because, when we go with that, we talked about, Jesus' redemption and dying on the cross and things, but then also you look at this. dying to evil in yourself and dying to sin, some villains need to be that embodiment of what needs to die to be a better person. Because some people are just some villains. Some people aren't. Some villains don't need redemption arcs and won't get them because they have actively rejected getting a redemption arc.
Yeah.
They've gone. They've intentionally had chances to come back. They rejected them. They didn't take them, and they kept saying, "I'm just going to be the bad guy." There are some people who just, "I'm the villain,
I think I
and I
think
want
that
to be."
I think that's super interesting because I think in the culture, I think in fiction, I think in fiction, there's an interesting truth to what you just said. Very interesting truth to what you just said. Um, how, however, when I think about humanity in life in general, I think there is a part of us deep down inside that craves justice and can appreciate redemption.
I wouldn't say everybody. I would say there are some people who can get so wrapped up in their own way of viewing the world, their own hubris and their way of seeing things. They're right, and there's nothing wrong with what they're doing. And the justice that they're seeking is their version of justice. Or some people don't seek justice. Like remember
Yeah.
in the Dark Knight, where he said Alfred was recapping the story and he went on about that criminal, whatever they're trying to stop. And they said there was no reasoning with him. There was no way to stop him. They couldn't convince him. And Batman is just like, well, what did you do? And then he said, we had to burn the forest down to stop him. Some men just want to see the world burn. Some people you can't reason with. And that's the redemptive villain does reflect us from coming back. But then there are some villains who reflect that part of us that just I've rejected all forms of light,
So
all
what do you do?
forms of good.
What do you do with Jeffrey Dahmer?
Well,
Like, because for example, Hitler would represent that in real life. Adolf Hitler would represent someone who would fit the archetype of what you just said. Someone who is so wicked, so evil that I think it's universal outside of Nazis, right?
yeah.
That Hitler should have died.
Mm-hmm.
And he got lucky that he killed himself, right?
Yeah.
Because he should have been tortured, he should have been killed for the absolutely abominable human atrocities that happened with the Holocaust, right? I don't know of people outside of Nazis who I don't hang out with Nazis who would disagree with that.
Yeah.
But you take someone like Jeffrey Dahmer, right? You take someone who cannibal. I'm not. I gotta blurp all those out now. I shouldn't have said them out loud. But who did these human atrocities? But man, he came to know Jesus, right?
Yeah.
So what do you do with someone who there's this image, the textbook image of someone who should absolutely be condemned for their atrocities?
Well,
Can they be redeemed?
they can, but that does not mean that the consequences of what you did should be sidestepped.
Oh, I agree.
Yeah, because some people,
I agree.
You have to atone for what you've done.
I agree.
But I do believe some people can't. I do believe anyone who wants to be forgiven can and should be forgiven, even though that's a very hard sell for most people. But like I said, going back to the villain thing, well, we're still on it. The redemption is something that we want because we not only want to see redemption for ourselves, want to see the redemption for people that we know that gone into the bad side, want to see them come back. And then also on the same note, we want to see those who were truly enemies of good and what's right, see them brought to justice. Because like we said, some people just have made that conscious decision to forego any and all good. Like they didn't expound upon this, and I wish they had of, which was a giant just bag fumble, was when they did the sequel trilogy for Star Wars, and Kylo Ren was the character who was struggling with the light. He knew what was right and what he should have done. He ended up killing Han, kept going down that path. He was going to end up killing Leia in this Return. What was it? Right, Last Jedi. That's it. And he didn't end up doing it. And after he killed his master and tried to convince Rey, he just said in that moment, "I'm done with it all. I'm just gonna go fully down the bad path." And she's like, "Don't do this. Like, don't do it." He was like, "No, like, forget it all. Like the everything that came before, good. This. I'm just gonna do it my way now." And I was actually very compelled by that because we've seen the redemption story in Star Wars The Fall, and I would have wanted to see the guy who came from good, had the knowledge of what right is, and just rejected it and went down the path of becoming. This guy is just has had 3 chances thus far and just said no to all of it. And I would have thought that would have been a very interesting flip for a Star Wars villain. And also, it would have been highly realistic too, because Luke gave him a chance. Like, you don't have to do this. Han gave him a chance. You don't have to do this. And just Rey gave him a chance. Like, stop. You got people like that who just no. I'm not gonna do the right thing. I don't want to. I want to hold on to whatever it is that makes me this way, whether it be my vices, my pride, anger, distrust. I want these things to define me. And it's like when you start dealing with the concept of, icons and things like that in sin, if you connect with the sin long enough, you become the icon of that. So some people will just become, I'm a greedy, prideful, powerful person. And eventually you indulge in that. You are the icon of those things.
Yeah.
And it's a state of consciousness that you constantly are affirming and telling yourself, this is who I am.
C.S. Lewis actually talks about that in his novel about heaven and hell, and how hell is an extension of ultimately what we've wanted out of this world and who we ultimately wanted to worship and serve. And it's super interesting. I agree though with the idea that there are things that we do that are sinful and wrong and wicked in this world, and ultimately everything is going to be atoned in the end.
Yeah.
But it is one of those things where you think about someone like Jeffrey Dahmer. Jeffrey Dahmer understood that he needed to go to the death penalty.
Yeah.
I don't think if I'm not mistaken, he didn't.
I think somebody took him out in prison.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, I think
but he understood I sinned. And it wasn't a self-righteousness. You see this often in different tropes in film as well, where the hero seeks to atone for his sins.
Yeah.
I think there's some validity in that. Yeah. Right. But again, when we think about the faith, this is what makes Christianity, I think, so different than I think a lot of other religions. Is that sin has been atoned. Holiness in the redemptive nature of our lives is walking with Jesus and holiness moving forward. And so I think, for example, when we think about the idea of forgiveness, if we were to do something wicked to someone, like let's say there was a sexual deviance against a young girl within our congregation.
Yeah.
Right. If that happens, what Christianity says is that is wicked. That's wrong. There needs to be clear boundaries now, whether that person is no longer here and we encourage them to go somewhere else, whether that is there are clear boundaries on when, where, and how that person interacts, right? There are still consequences for that action, but the mandate is forgiveness.
Yeah.
But forgiveness doesn't necessarily always look like, well, now this person is just in my small group and we're best friends. Forgiveness, I believe, at its root, still has to deal with the consequences of actions. And so when I think about the idea of a redemptive story, when bringing it full circle back to Diddy, what Diddy did was absolutely wrong. And there needs to be clear consequences for those actions. And I hope, again, allegedly wrong.
Yeah, we hope.
And that there's clear consequences of the actions, but it does not mean that Diddy is not redeemed. I'll give you an example of this, how this looked in real life. And I don't know why people don't talk about this enough. The first is with Dylan Roof.
Yeah.
When he walked into that church and slayed those Christians in that predominantly black congregation.
Yep. I remember that.
What we don't talk about is the testimonies of the saints. When they came and they testified, they said what he did was wrong, but I forgive him. If you go back and you watch those videos, there's chills because they didn't say it out of malice. They understood that there should be consequences and they demanded justice, but they also understood, man, there's something still worth redeeming within Dylan that is valid and valuable. And so when I think about, when I think about Diddy's lawyer, it makes me wonder if he looked at Diddy and was like, I don't see your desire for redemption, regardless of how this is about to go.
Because you know what? On that with Diddy, that video he did where, you know, he was on the beach or whatever on Instagram talking, I'm seeking healing and those things. That came off so disingenuous.
Oh, 100%.
Like, I didn't feel like that he actually meant that. And I still partially think there might be a part of him that thinks he's going to beat this.
Yeah.
And get over it. And, you know, maybe, I don't know if he does beat, I don't know if he's going to come out, make a hot couple singles and then just people will just brush past it. I don't know if that'll happen. Everyone does have something in them that's good and that's worth redeeming, but it's only if they choose to act upon that redemption and what's good in there. Everybody has good in them from their very inception. It's like a ball of light and they cloud it when you do dark things. And some people just, I don't want the light anymore.
Yeah, I would argue that the inherent thing is that you were made in the image of God.
Yeah.
That because of you existing as an image bearer of God, you are worth dignity, you are worth respect, you are worth redemption, you are worth all the qualities of salvation that can be offered just because of you being an image bearer.
Yeah.
But again, the gospel, because of sin.
It's rejection. Because at any point you can reject that light. Everything, that's where free will comes in. Everything is a choice. Even the choice to be redeemed, or the choice to, you know, I've done bad things, I need to get fixed. The choice to be good, everything is a choice.
Yeah.
So with the situation with his lawyer stepping away, like I said, we've gone over like 3 different options. I think that the lawyer probably saw what was going on and was like, this is sick. Then Diddy probably lied and misspoke. Well, not misspoke, just flat out didn't tell him the truth or withheld information. And he probably saw there was no desire to really change and probably had some pride and arrogance. I mean, one of these could be the thing or all of them could be the thing. But I would say maybe Diddy might beat it. Maybe Diddy might hop on a couple gospel tracks. You might see Kirk Franklin and P. Diddy, the anointing oil.
If you do another photo op with TD Jakes, I'm gonna go crazy.
He gonna do the anointing oil single, and just like that. And who knows? I'm saying he can go.
John, can I be honest with you? Can I be honest with you for a moment here? One of the hardest things about being Christian is what we're talking about.
Yeah.
One of the hardest things about being Christian is looking at what happened in sub-Saharan Africa and the 70 Christians that were beheaded recently.
Boy, that's a hard one to talk about. I've been following that. That's a difficult thing. What's
hard about being Christian is looking at the 70 Christians who were beheaded and crying out to God and crying out for justice. And then also looking at the people who beheaded them and saying, Jesus loves you. Like, you are still worthy of redemption. Like,
that's a hard one to do.
That's hard, man.
That is a very difficult thing to do, is to you're actually actively killing me. And I'm still going to say, like, you're worthy of being loved. God still loves you. And I think that's probably one of the deepest things as a believer you could do, because that reflects back to the sacrifice on the cross. Like, forgive them, for they know not what they do.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
image bearing.
That's
To
real.
look
Man.
at them and just say that.
That's real, man. Man, man. Let's kind of transition a little bit. It's kind of hard to transition from that. But who would you say are your top 3 hip hop moguls of all time?
That's next to go down.
He's so silly. Yo, that's crazy.
uh Top 3 hip hop moguls. Number 1, I would probably say Dr. Dre. And the reason why I would say Dr. Dre is because of the movement in the late 80s of NWA redefining gangster rap. Well, inventing gangster rap,
Yeah,
or more or less. Well, I think it already kind of existed with Ice-T.
maybe popularizing.
Yeah, to popularize it, which that challenged what it's okay to rap about. It challenged the mainstream perception of hip hop not being the 80s rap, because in the 80s, which I love 80s hip hop, it's probably my favorite version of it, but they was kind of just rapping about whatever they was seeing at the time. Like, I'm going downstairs to get ice cream.
Hey, stop.
I'll turn to my TV screen.
Yo, man. Come on, man. You know them old heads. Them old heads.
They gonna be here. I stand real tall. I ball at them all. I always
them old heads. Hey, but that's real hip hop. Don't you get it wrong. That's real hip. See, right there, they talking about real stuff. See, you kids nowadays, y'all got y'all mumble rap. I can't understand. See, I can understand going down the stairs and getting some food. I can get that down now.
I mean, that's kind of what it was. But I mean, I was watching Crush Grove and Wild Style. I'm like, man, that's exactly
let's
do it.
Let's keep it pushing. We gotta keep it because we gotta keep it pushing real fast. The next two.
So Dr. Dre, I would, and you know what? Just talking about the accomplishments, I would have to probably say Diddy. Just talking about the accomplishments, Bad Boy Records, Biggie, all the stuff that influenced. Diddy changed the way a lot of pop rap was made before Nelly really got going. The sampling, the reusing chords in own songs. I'd probably say Diddy is one.
Right.
And Jay-Z.
Yeah.
Jay-Z.
Yeah.
But this is the controversial one. This is the controversial second slot, which I'll come back to this guy probably later in the episode if I got time to double back around. The true number 1, Kanye West.
You know what's funny? Kanye West, man. No, you know what's funny? It's, man, there's a lot there.
I know, y'all. I believe me. I know. I look at his tweets. I look at his Instagram. I know. But we can't deny a couple years ago, you had to have a pair of Yeezys. Everybody wanted them some Yeezys. Yeezy jumped over Jumpman with the whole Nike deal, went to Adidas. The fashion, the artists that he done put on, the albums that made influence. If you didn't have the graduation was like almost the foundational blueprint of the backpack era of hip hop.
It's real.
So we had Asher Roth, B.O.B., Charles Hamilton, all of those guys. The graduation gave a lot of them they sound and they steez and they background to really go off of.
You said Charles Hamilton. That's the pink. Oh my goodness.
Pink polos with
man. That just took me back, man. I'll tell you my top 3 hip hop moguls of all time. Jay-Z, particularly because of business and investments, ruthless businessman. Diddy, because of the intersection of hip hop and how he was able to bring that into business.
Yeah.
Again, we don't mess with Diddy.
So don't.
But I'm gonna give you one. I like Kanye because of the intersection of fashion and pop culture. But I'm gonna give you one that people don't think about.
Okay.
Akon.
You're right.
People don't think about Akon. Akon has flipped entire economies back in his home nation and in a couple of different African nations in terms of his investment into business, tech, different things like that, education, building schools, building infrastructure within entire countries off of his back. And so I think hip hop mogul Akon is someone who is transforming sub-Saharan Africa in a lot of amazing ways that we just don't get to see nor talk about.
Also, he put on Lady Gaga.
He did.
Yeah, he put on Lady Gaga.
Poker face. All right.
Yep. Which that alone,
yeah,
is Quite epic.
Let's keep it pushing, man. Hey, if you're listening to the podcast and you haven't liked or subscribed yet or followed us on all major platforms, you are missing out on phenomenal culture. I get to hang out with my brother John today, and we are talking about Diddy's lawyer backing out. But now we're about to talk a little bit about icons in the culture. Talk a little bit about Beyonce and Taylor Swift to start this conversation. And I want to kind of contextualize this before we get going here, John.
Mm-hmm.
The reason why I wanted to talk about this was it played background to Kendrick Lamar.
Okay.
And fair, Kendrick's having a moment in the culture.
Greatest rapper of all time.
Oh, man, I love it. See, this is my type of guy. But I think Beyonce recently won the Grammy for Best Country Album. Regardless of how you may feel about her winning that Grammy or about that her album being a country album, I don't really care about that conversation as much as it was a moment that happened at the Grammys with Taylor Swift presenting that award to Beyonce. You're laughing. I'm serious. This is a moment.
I'm thinking
this is a moment. Funny. And so when you think about full circle, Kanye West, who we just talked about as being an icon, coming up, grabbing a Mac from Taylor Swift. Beyonce had the greatest record of all time, this iconic moment in popular culture, right? That honestly, in a lot of ways, propelled Taylor Swift to even greater heights because people had her back like crazy. I really do believe that. Regardless, the culture always was trying to pin Beyonce against Taylor Swift in music. And so for Beyonce to come in, win for this country album, Taylor Swift giving her the award, I thought it was a really interesting moment. But it's not just that moment of the image of that, but it's the idea that it even matters so much. Like, it's the idea of, man, the obsession of icons that you literally see grown women crying when they see that moment. You seeing grown dudes, us, talking about this moment. There's just something in the idea of icons and iconic culture that I think is valid and maybe worth a little discussion to think about whether that's healthy or not.
Okay, let me start off saying this. The celebrity icon thing is definitely not healthy, the way we obsess over celebrities. But here's the thing. When we talk about art, music, culture, all of these things, we innately want to connect with art because art is just, you expressing how you feel through different ways, whether it's writing, music, movies, video games, whatever it is you choose to make. And as humans, we're supposed to be interconnected. We're supposed to have friends. We're supposed to have people around us. And you can connect to those experiences or what that person, the harder you connect to an artist, a lot of times the more they're putting themselves or something into their music or their craft or what they're doing, and also building their brand. An iconic celebrity, an icon, short, is somebody who they have a style, timeless influence, activism. They have their own things that make them stand out. And sometimes we want to be that person. Like how we said, we're image bearers of Christ, icons. Sometimes celebrities reflect things that we want to be and do that we either can't because we don't have the money, we don't have the time. Some of us just, not even gonna lie, some of us just, you ain't it. You don't got the sauce. You just can't do what some of them do. Like, and that's not bad. Everybody not gonna be brawling like LeBron. Everybody ain't gonna be rapping like Kendrick. Everybody ain't gonna be a Martin Scorsese when they pick up the camera. You can be something, but sometimes you won't be that. And it kind of gives you something to aspire and something to try to emulate. So I don't think there's anything wrong with having people you look up to, but I think the obsession over it is the problem. But there are some people like me. I connected heavily with Star Wars and just things like that. And I feel different ways about how it's been handled now. But, you connect with it because of the human element that you see. Like, you see the story of the characters, how they're overcoming it, and you plug it into your own life. So I think we can't necessarily help that we care or we look up to people. Because if you're not looking up to a Beyonce, a Jay-Z, or Taylor Swift or something, more likely there's somebody in your life you're looking up to. You're looking up to, that one OG at your job who been there for X amount of years, who does a great job and always got something positive to say. Looking up to a pastor. You're looking up to a family member, a friend in your life who you see who just stayed the course and just never gave up.
Mm-hmm.
So there's always somebody we're going to look up to and just, I want to be that guy. I want their example. Yeah. And celebrities, they're just, sometimes we just see them a lot.
Yeah.
And they're pushed on us a lot. And that's why I feel that way. Sometimes it can be unhealthy because you don't know these people and they don't know you. So the connection is limited. I think that's why Beyonce and Taylor Swift sell concerts out the way they do, is because people want just to be in the room, to absorb the energy, to breathe the same air.
It's the same. But it's interesting, the obsessive nature over it because of those connections, the music that we connect to, the art that we connect to, and it's the removal of the humanness. Or I would say this: we enjoy celebrities that give us just enough humanness for us to make deeper connection.
Yeah.
So, I want to know that Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce are a nice couple, are doing well, or even when they have like a little bit of an argument or breakup, because that's human that I connect to. What I don't want is to know your deepest, darkest secrets. What I don't want is to actually see the depth of your humanity in a way that's very vulnerable and hard, because honestly, we don't even want to look at ourselves in that way.
Yeah.
This is what, again, it makes the gospel so hard sometimes, is because the gospel forces us to actually look very deeply and honestly about sin in our nature. And it's because Jesus wants to redeem all of that.
Yeah.
I think it's much easier to have a lot of surface level relationships with people, yet alone with God, than it is for people to really know us. And because it's vulnerable. It's very vulnerable. It's this idea, man, if I give my heart away, there's a risk there. Yeah. Right? If I give too much of myself away, people are going to lose respect for me. People aren't. And I think there's honestly some cultural truth to that, right? That idea that if we give too much of ourselves, that people are going to judge and disconnect.
Yeah, that's actually a truthful thing. Some people do kind of take that. Like I remember, somebody told me this. I ain't gonna say who that, but before I married my wife, somebody had told me, family member, that girl, don't text her too much and all the time. Because you don't want to come off like you're giving too much of yourself and she's not giving anything to you. Like, don't, she didn't text me back. Let me send 17 more messages till I eventually hear something. Because then you start sometime looking like, hey, I'm giving too much of myself away and I'm not getting any of this person. And then not just with that, just with friendships, you don't want to feel like I'm always initiating the hangout. I'm always texting and it feels one-sided. So you feel like you're investing in something that you're not getting returns on. Like, would you really take like $1,000 every month and then put it into this put it into some kind of stock? And the person just clearly every time you come there be like, am I making an investment? Oh yeah. Would you really want to do that?
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like that's super interesting, man. I see things as unhealthy because I think it's in the limited nature of us seeing the art and us seeing the life of a person that we make some really big assumptions or connections to that person and reflection, and it becomes worship, right? It becomes worship. The root word of celebrity it's Latin, right? I think it's celebritas.
Yeah, I was just about to say celebritas.
Yeah, and it just means to be famous, to be worthy of celebration, right? Like to be made famous. I think there's such a cautionary tale to that, because I'll put it this way: when it comes to celebrity culture, it is okay to have people that inspire us. And that we can even look at to be aspiring towards. But when I think about icons and idols, there's a fine line between worship and inspiration.
Yeah, it can easily become worship if it's not careful. Because one person I'm definitely seeing that with is Kanye. Because I'm a gigantic Kanye fan. Well, now me and Kanye kind of akin to me in Star Wars right now. Like, hey, the old stuff cool, This new stuff,
I miss the
I'm
old
I'm
Kanye.
like I'm tuned out of. And when I say with me, like Kanye is interesting to me because I've been following him for years, and I feel like at some point he was reflecting where I was at different points in life, like the college dropout, the late registration, and that. And then around the time he started, going back to church and coming into God, I was already back in that point. So I'm like, oh, Kanye's going in the God direction. He's saying some, which we know what he said. He said a few things I've agreed with heavily, and he said things I have not agreed with. But it's like now I don't know nothing he does feel genuine anymore. And I still see people defending him, riding with him, saying he did this. And I'm like, look, if you care about your heroes or whatever, you would want to hold them to some kind of standard or accountability. And if you start getting to a point where you don't hold people to standards and to accountability just because they make great art, great shoes, great whatever, then that starts becoming worship, where you just start getting over absorbed into them.
Right.
And that goes for Beyonce, because I see a lot of Beyonce fans just going so hard, unnecessarily even. They're just being racist or hating because she made a country. I'm like, first of all, they can feel how they want to feel. And next, I know it's gonna make probably some people unhappy. Beyonce's album is a country album. And before people say it's not country, I'm like, artists switch sounds and switch genres all the time. Like Prince. If Prince was still alive today, Prince would have made a trap album probably. We probably would have heard Prince on the album.
A Prince trap album would have been fire.
Could you imagine Prince alive today rapping like Playboy Cardi?
Hey, yeah.
Like, I would have heard. I'd listen that first day. Yeah, so I'm like, Beyonce, the album is a country album. Artists just switch all the time.
Yeah.
So I'm saying I don't know why that there's such well, I kind of do.
Well, it's interesting that you say that.
I kind of get the gatekeeping argument because when that's a topic I will do in a previous episode. I kind of understand gatekeeping being someone who's like really into like a lot of different like fandoms, like sci-fi and stuff. I get the gatekeeping argument.
Yeah.
I really do actually get it.
I would argue, what are the qualifications of a music icon is that it's about lasting influence and legacy.
Mm-hmm.
It's about cultural impact, right? That do they impact the culture? And then I would argue, in terms of their music, is there evidence of success? Right? I think a real musical icon consistently at the top in album sales, consistently selling out stadiums, consistently is someone that still is doing those things to this day. People are still listening to their music. So it's I would say again, it's legacy and influence, general cultural impact, and then I would argue that their music is still timeless.
Okay.
What would you say? How would you define a music icon?
That's actually how I would define it myself.
Okay.
That's actually a perfect way to define them.
So based on that criteria, what are your top 3 music icons of all time?
See, that's hard to kind of say because there's so many artists who I feel I want to say that about, but I wasn't really alive for their time or their reign. So much of this conversation would be us being trapped in our moment. So if you ask most people, probably Taylor Swift, Beyonce, and probably Drake.
Yeah.
Weekend, people like that. Those would be the most common ones.
Close honorable mentions right now. Yep.
Yeah, that's who it would really be. But I'm saying for me,
I said all time.
Yeah, for me,
all time top 3 music icons.
Okay, so for me, if I had to say that, like I say, it's a prisoner moment kind of thing. But if I had to just base it off of how I feel, who's truly iconic, Michael Jackson would be number 1 because no matter what, everybody gets compared to even the big ones today. The Weeknd, Chris Brown, Usher, when he dropped the greatest R&B album ever, Confessions, he was still compared to Michael Jackson. So Michael Jackson would be number 1. Would I say Elvis Presley? maybe because this you gotta go bigger than just when you say all time we gotta include just every genre and everything. So I would say Elvis Presley would probably be up. Elvis Presley might mess around and be bigger than Michael Jackson. I don't know, depending on who you ask. And let's see, third place. This would be a new entry, which I would have to see, but it would probably be tied between Beyonce or Taylor Swift. Now, this is an on the spot question,
Okay.
so I would have to do more research. But I'm saying if I just think of these people, these would probably be the biggest ones. Because then these artists also encapsulate multiple eras.
Yep.
Is what I'm thinking of.
Mhm.
Because Michael Jackson, king of the 80s, and that spread a little bit further. Elvis, same thing. Beyonce and Taylor Swift probably be modern day, the modern day big ones.
I can mess with that. I would say my top 3 music icons of all time: Michael Jackson, king of pop, revolutionized pop music, dance, music videos. He really took performance to a different level.
Yeah.
I would say Elvis Presley. He was one of the first to become truly genreless. Even though he was rock and roll, he integrated gospel, blues, mainstream, country that captivated everyone.
Yeah.
Now, he did steal some music. We got to be fair, but what his lasting impact still set the standard. And then this one's kind of a weird one. I would say the Beatles. So the Beatles, it's not one person, but that group revolutionized what eventually would become rock music. Even songwriting, we think of someone like Ed Sheeran, and the music industry in general in terms of creating cohesive, innovative albums.
Yeah.
They were one of the first people to really be international. I don't think people talk about that enough. Beatles were British, and they captivated a European and an American audience.
They did.
Now, I would add this. My honorable mention, I think modern area, I agree. Beyonce, Taylor Swift, Drake kind of have defined the last decade or 2 decades, maybe Kanye. Yeah. But I would say James Brown is someone that we don't talk about enough as a music icon. He laid the foundation for hip hop. He laid the foundation for performance in terms of on stage performances before Prince, before even a Michael Jackson. And when you go to a James Brown concert, it was a whole experience. It wasn't just you were there for the music. James Brown, I think, laid that foundation. He's just not talked about enough.
You know what? I was listening to James Brown yesterday. James Brown is legitimately one of my favorite musical acts ever.
Get out of town. Love it.
Yeah, and you know what? As I started diving into it more, I actually really, really enjoyed the Beatles. I was going through like their records. They have some fantastic records.
Fantastic.
Fantastic records. I turned on the Beatles, and that's all I listened to during work shifts. Like the Yellow Summer.
Come on.
It's been a day's work, dude, and I've been sleeping.
I'm telling you, if you like Ed Sheeran, you have to love the Beatles. Because I hear Ed, and he's probably I would argue, the greatest songwriter of this generation in a lot of ways. We can argue about that.
I don't know if I agree with that one.
But the Beatles, when I think about the legacy of the Beatles, I hear him, man. He's unreal.
All over. There are influences all over the place, actually, when you think about it.
But I think this is a really interesting transition point. Again, if you haven't liked and subscribed yet, what are you doing? Come on, man. Join the community, man. We are here. We are live, man. DLW is growing. We're so grateful. Over the last month, we've gained 113 subscribers, and we just are getting started. We're just getting started. As you can see here, we got amazing brands coming up. The local show featuring myself as the interviewer and incredible culture shifters here in St. Louis. Executive produced and by my brother John Morgan. We got the Poetic Conversations podcast coming later this year with my incredible sister and incredibly talented poet. And again, DLW. We're gonna keep building amazing content for you. So you need to like and subscribe and follow us and on all podcasting and video platforms. But I think this is a great segue. We talk a lot about celebrities and what's healthy, what's not healthy. We talked about even the idea of being iconic. But I always like to have a topic of faith. And I feel like the idea of Christian celebrity culture is an interesting one. And as both of us who are creators and people who are building these brands and platforms, it's something that we got to be wary of and cautious of. I am not even close to being a celebrity. Don't get it twisted. I got I got a cousin who's a really well-known musician. I got some amazing folks in my life who are really well-known. I know some celebrities, right? So I'm not even trying this in comparison, but I find this really interesting how the world can get caught up in icons, in idols, right? But so can Christians. And Christians can get caught up in that both as celebrities are aspiring to be celebrities, and Christians can get caught up in celebrity culture, right? So whether it's following Christians who they see as celebrities, or even someone like Beyonce, and there's an obsession that looks like the world sometimes that I don't know, man. It's really interesting. And so I kind of want to contextualize this and maybe talk a little bit about Christians who are celebrities and then Christians who seek to be celebrities, and kind of have a discussion. I know that you have some very strong opinions about this, and I wanted to hear. I'll let you start off.
Well, so I do think that a lot of times what we end up doing as Christians, I see some Christians get so caught up in celebrity culture and celebrity worship, I sometimes forget they Christian. I really do. I see some people, everything a celebrity does, says, reposts, it's the gospel. Like, oh man, what's it about? They do this, I'm gonna do this too. And I'm like, that's not the right way to do it, because you're getting to a point where you're compromising what you do. Because I'm saying, I see some people, this guys do this too, because you see some guys on there. I see some girls, some women get so wrapped up into Beyonce, Megan Thee Stallion, and all that. They talking, I'm on some hot girl stuff, and they all that. I'm like, baby girl, I just saw you in church. What you doing?
Hey, yo,
Like, what you doing?
Hot Girl Summer Church Edition is crazy.
Sometimes don't even be church edition. It just be hot girl something. I'm like, girl, what was you?
Yo, that's wild.
Mom, we saw you on the east side.
Not on the east side.
I wasn't there. I was on Instagram.
Man.
We don't.
John, what you know about the east side, man? I'm praying.
I wasn't always saved. I say that. Who you see? He wasn't that always. But I'm saying, no. So I be saying that. I'm like, you're not supposed to do that. And I'm like, sometimes I gotta check myself, because I can get into hip hop culture heavily, get into movies and films sometimes, where I talk about that probably too much or over obsessed over it. So I gotta sometimes back and be like, hey, I'm a Christian first. I still do, like, I'm a very heavy cinema guy. So I'm like, I was over there at the Plaza Frontenac watching the little indie movies every other week. So I'm into it like that. So, but most importantly, what I want to talk about is when people say, oh, well, we need alternatives to the world. So we create.
Let me touch on what you just said before you jump in there, man. I think what you said is so profound. I think as a Christian, the word of God says to be in the world, but not of the world. I don't think that all music is demonic, but we have to be discernful of what can be. I don't think that all film is demonic, but we have to be discernful of how the enemy wants to use film to get us away from Jesus and the gospel. I think it is okay to just, I think there are some things that are just neutral.
Yeah.
But I think when you got to be discernful, because the enemy will take something that's neutral and make it very much so anti-God quickly.
Oh yeah. No,
you know what I'm saying? And so
agree with that.
I would argue that when it comes to celebrities, Christians, we have to first and foremost live through the lens of the Holy Spirit. That what people say, if it's not in agreement with the Holy Spirit and the Word of God, right, then just be aware of that and name that and be honest about that. I think for me, it's the lack of honesty. This is where you begin to see the idols. It's the lack of honesty around, man, this is of God, this is not of God.
Yeah.
Or even if it's true neutral, that thing becomes when it can become not of God, we try to turn a blind eye. No, like, let's just name truth for what it is. I like this album. I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
Kendrick Lamar is my favorite secular rapper.
Yeah.
I don't listen to a lot of secular rap. I primarily listen to Christian hip hop.
Yeah.
Like 99.9% of the time. When I was listening to GNX, the song Reincarnation, fire track, fire concept. I understand where he's going. That last verse, where he's making the parallelism to Lucifer,
Yeah.
As a Christian, I got to be honest. I can't get behind that. I
Yeah.
see what he was trying to do, but he was touching on something that I can't get behind. Or I can be honest. Hey, the violence in this music, I can't get behind.
Yeah.
Right. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like there's not violence in these types. I can't get behind all the cussing, the language. I can't get behind that.
Yeah.
But if I'm not being honest about that, then I think I'm missing the mark.
What you're doing, what you're saying is with all of that is you can't get behind it, because our beliefs in our faith, but you can see the artistic merit behind it.
Right. Or even like have times where it can be entertaining. Like it can be entertaining.
Mm-hmm.
But there's you got to be cautious. You got to be cautious. And, and I think, man, when we take the word of human beings as gods, or we take the things that they're able to offer in terms of entertainment and culture, and we try our best to Jesusify them, right? And we try. It's like someone reading the word and then interpreting onto that what they want, versus let's just look at reality for what it is and filter it through the word itself.
Yeah, I can agree with that. And this is why one of the reasons why I wanted to really get into filmmaking, reviewing movies, and touching on that is because culture is very important. Very important. Art helps define a culture. Art, because you got some people never read the Bible, never pick up a Bible, never step in a church. And there's movies, music, and shows that will influence their worldview, theology, and philosophy. Before that, we'll get a chance to get to them. And I think how as Christians we engage with culture in general is very important. Culture isn't something that we should run away from.
Yeah.
Culture is something that we should try to influence and change by offering an alternative to it through high art. And one problem that I tend to see with celebrity Christian culture, and a lot of times Christian culture in general, is it doesn't try to really create something new and something great. It emulates what's there and tries to, put a Jesus stamp on it, but it doesn't really connect because the intention is let's influence the people and let them hear it and be like, oh, this is a Jesus rap song. But instead, why don't you try to change the genre or create high art and let your faith be the backbone or the underpinning of it? Because here's the thing. I believe when you make a movie, a song or whatever, you don't have to scream what you believe at people. They should be able to interpret it by breaking down the art. So, for example, I love Christian rap and I try to be very selective on secular rap, but I've kind of been tuning out of Christian rap a little because my biggest problem is a lot of times you see them captioning their videos, what, I'm a Christian Kendrick, I'm a Christian so-and-so or this. They keep freestyling on people's beats. Like he had that whole situation with Caleb Gordon where he kept taking other people's beats and songs and that came an issue. And I said, one of the biggest things that holds Christian rap back is because you got great artists. You got the Dream Junkies, Eshawn Burgundy, AI The Anomaly, which they're great, but a large majority of it keeps copying what the other side is doing. And it's a little brother syndrome where they obsess over it.
Yeah.
And because of that, they limit themselves to where I don't think you're really ever going to get a Christian album that's as innovative or as great as To Pimp a Butterfly, A Good Kid, Mad City, A Dark Fantasy, or Rodeo and Illmatic.
I don't know if I agree with that. I'm gonna tell you why. First off, Swoop. Swoop is a huge artist for me, who I think honestly I would push back. He had two unbelievable works of art. The first one was called Wake Up in 2012. The second was called 2014. It was called Cinema.
Those are good albums.
Both unbelievable albums.
Yeah.
You think about Show Baraka.
Yeah.
And we think about every one of his albums, frankly speaking.
Yeah, you got AI with Soul Acrylic. I don't got a couple.
I don't actually agree with that in the sense of who's dominating the culture. right? And I ask that question because ultimately the enemy is at the forefront of the culture. And so what we perceive as the innovation in the people who are pushing the sounds and culture forward, that's what we get to see and understand. And so when I don't know how else to put this. I know Christians who are creating dope art.
Yeah.
Whether it's in music, whether it's in film, whether it's in different spaces, but don't have the platform or the resources that the mainstream can provide. And I know that there's Christians who are doing that right now in the culture. Denzel Washington is a convictional Christian. In fact, I think he retired to become a full-time minister recently.
Yeah, I think Black Panther 3 gonna be his last movie.
His last movie. And so when we think about, he's always been Christian. In fact, one of the well-known secrets around Denzel is before every movie decision, he prays, he fasts, and he seeks counsel from his father and other Christian folks before he does a film, including something like a Malcolm X, including something like a Training Day.
Yeah.
Right. And those are not things that you would say that's Christian. Right. But he's a Christian in the culture. This is what Lecrae, I think, was pushing back on even back in the mid 2010s, where he was saying Christian rap versus rapper who's Christian, or, you know, I'm a rapper who's Christian. I want to create good art, but I want you to know I can't remove my Christianity. And so I say all that because I think there's room enough in art for two things.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's room enough in art to be unapologetically Christian. If you want to rap the gospel because it saved your life and that's what you wanted to testify in your story and that's all that's in your heart to talk about, there's room for you to do that. And there's room for you to do that with a sound that's popular. There's room for you to do that over trap beat. There's room for you to do that melodically. It's room for you to do that however. But I would push back personally and say, I think there are Christians who are trying to do things innovatively in those different spaces in film and art, who want to have the message of Jesus, whether explicitly or subtly, who just don't have the platform or resources to be able to do that and have the push that the mainstream machine can give them. And I just think it's a matter of not being seen more than it is a matter of like not trying.
And you know what? That's interesting. And I will agree with a large portion of that. And that's where, tying back to the celebrity Christian culture, because you have these gigantic makeup pastors and people like that who are borderline celebrities in their own rights. And some of them actually could be voices and push these art forms. They could fund them. Well, some of them probably do. I don't know. Some of them could fund them, promote them, push them, but they won't do that because faith is their brand more than they're committed more to faith as a brand than they are to faith. That's why you see so many people, like, you know what, viewers at home, I'm sorry, but it's just that's why you got so many people like Mike Todd's and people like all of these ones who are, it's more about show. You can tell they want to be entertainers, but for whatever reason in the secular world they couldn't make it. So they water down every aspect. Theology does not compute. Proper doctrine, 300 error, connection not found. And they focus on, you know, the antics and to be shown, seen, showmanship. They sprinkle a little Jesus in there, you know, like it's actually Christian. They're basically just TED Talks, just with a Christian message in there. And because people feel, oh, this person has a big following, God must be anointing them and blessing them and promoting them. So I need to support them, listen to them. And if anyone attacks them or tries to, you know, call them into question, I need to remember what the Bible says. Do not try to bring these people down. The Lord will deal with them. Calling out anointed men makes you an enemy of the word. So they take this and they create this defense. They defend these people religiously, like a Beyonce or like a Taylor Swift. Like if you say just insert, you can, we know who these people are. You can insert their names of Tiffany Montgomery, anybody, Sarah Jake Roberts, anybody. You can't tell me she not saved. She anointed. When she took her wig off and stepped on stage, I felt the spirit. I'm like, well, what was she? I'm saying, well, what was the scripture? What was she talking about? Like, what was she saying? Where in the Bible do this
You
line
said
up?
that so seriously.
Because that's how they be. They be getting. Some people just get. I'm
Yeah.
like, you more so committed to the person than you are the spirit and the doctrine and the theology. You don't love the church because that's Christ's establishment. You love this church because that's that person's establishment.
What you're following is not the person of Jesus. You're following the person of personality.
Yeah, it's a cult of personality. You've elevated this minister or this person, and then when people be like, well, you can't say nothing bad about them because they're anointed. I'm like, well, how do you know they're anointed? Somebody will say, how do you know they're not anointed? And I'm like, well, you can look at the spirit. Look at the fruit. Look at what they're doing. Yeah. Look at what they're saying. Look at what they're teaching. And the people who just defend that a lot of times, they're getting that for a different reason. Like, I don't necessarily want the gospel of repentance, dying to self. Yeah. I don't want all of that stuff. I they cut my hours at work. Yeah. What I'm gonna do? God gotta break through.
Well, I would argue. I would say the same standard that we would give worldly celebrities, we would give Christian celebrities, in the sense of what is their fruit.
Yeah.
Be discernful about fruit. At the end of the day, I would make this case, right? At the end of the day, is what they're saying and what they're doing in contradiction to the word of God? If it is, have no part about it.
Yeah.
Have no part in it.
Yeah.
It should be that simple.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say this, man. Oh man, how can I put this? There is a lot of value in feeling and being uplifted. And again, this goes back to celebrity, whether it's secular or Christian.
Yeah.
It's did I walk away from that with some sense of inspiration? This is the topic of what we're really talking as a thread throughout this whole thing. Is there's a story of redemption that we're constantly seeking within ourselves. And then there's a story of being inspired and being able to look up to something or someone. But I think the difference being, if you are a Christian as a celebrity in the culture, whether you have a pulpit or some sort of platform, the question is, when people leave your talk, do they learn more about Jesus than they learn more about you?
And also, I would challenge that. Did they learn more about Jesus, or did they learn more how to affirm themselves? Because then you have these people who sometimes get up there and go on about God's gonna, if you do this, you're gonna get your barn overfilled. You're gonna do all this, and you give them this message. You turn the gospel into more of a me-centric thing than a God-centric thing. And it becomes a form of self-affirmation just with the Bible. You pick scriptures out to support what you're doing, but it never really goes further than that. And you get people who end up a lot of times in this mindset of me, and then defending these people because, like you say, they add value to them because they fulfill them or have them feel a certain kind of way because of what they're doing. It's no different in the celebrity culture. A lot of these people are no different than like the Beehive or the Swifties or so. You have Christian Swifties and Beehive members, and then you got Christians who are like that with certain celebrities. Like I could name all the people. Your T.D. Jakes, you all of them. You can name all of them. Don't be talking about nothing really, but they're obsessed.
I would say you can find a little truth in everything. But the question is there ultimate truth, right? I can listen to a motivational speaker speak right now, unaffiliated, don't know if they're Christian or not, and they can have a fire TED talk, and I can take away simple truth.
Yeah.
Right. I can listen to a Mahatma Gandhi. I can listen to a TD Jakes sermon. I'm not trying to put TD Jakes and Mahatma Gandhi in the same cultural impact. What I'm trying to say is I can listen to almost anything and find truth. I don't think that that's the issue.
Yeah.
What I'm hearing though is when it comes to celebrity pastors, the emphasis should be on capital T truth. Is there ultimate truth that's being pointed to? Is God ultimately be the one that you're being asked and called to pursue, versus like, I'm just trying to give you good advice. I'm just trying to give you motivation. I'm trying to get you to quote me more than I am to really get back to the Lord.
Yeah, I'm giving you this kind of advice that you can use, but it's not really like we say, most you should have you everything you feel isn't from church isn't always gonna be a feel good message. Sometimes you have to go to church and come out and be like, I gotta get this together. And when you know what, that's like I say, that's the result of the celebrity culture. In order to be a Christian celebrity or be too exalted to that level, you can't talk about those things that will turn people away. You can't talk. You sit in service. They'll be, God gonna bless you. God gonna do that. But then nobody want to hear like God. Nobody want to hear the pastor get on stage and be like, brothers, leave that sneaky link alone. We saw you out at Wendy's last night. Like, no, they don't. No, don't nobody want to hear that.
So I would push a little bit in this way. I think I look at someone like Jackie Hill Perry, who talks about issues of LGBTQ, who talks about her sexuality and her journey with the Lord. But she's also pushed back against Beyonce.
Yeah.
Right. She has said, I love Beyonce, but man, like, this is cultic. This is what a beehive is. This is what this is. And I know Christian women who I love, who are huge Beyonce fans and huge Jackie Hill Perry fans. And they're like, well, I disagree with this piece of Jackie Hill Perry, but I don't reject Jackie Hill Perry. I feel like there is a type of Christian celebrity. I say that because I think there is a type of Christian celebrity where you can even look at the fruit of the lives that they have, that we can see visibly, and still see the fruit of the Holy Spirit. We can still see God, right? And Jackie Hill Perry, I think, is an example of a woman who I know loves Jesus, is imperfect, but is also a celebrity. She is a celebrity. And she is someone who, when I look at the fruit and evidence of the ministry God has given her, I can see people coming to know Jesus deeper and where they're at in terms of whatever the intersections or the reasons why they follow her. I see that they're trying to follow Jesus, not Jackie.
Yeah. And see, this is a thing I kind of feel. I don't really think. No, let me not say that. I don't think that per se, but I think the issue is a lot of times what you should do is you should let your actions and the things you make or do explain or tell people your faith. The problem I see a lot of times, people try to make faith into a brand. And there's nothing wrong with that per se. But in order to sometimes really get popular and get big, even secular celebrities do this. There has to be kind of a compromise. Because when you make music, most time you can't make music for everybody. You have to have an audience. You have to have a genre or sound. And when sometimes you can get into that, making it into a brand to where you water down things in order for appeal. Now, some people will organically get big just doing the right thing. But that's the biggest issue I think I have with Christian celebrity culture, is that sometimes it gets watered down. And if we really wanted to go into this, which this would, as for people listening at the start, I do identify as an Orthodox Christian going through catechism. I think that sometimes the issue with celebrity Christian culture is we don't always, and then also the people out looking, we don't have a definitive definition of what Christian doctrine and theology is for celebrities, for Christian celebrities, because some are non-denominational, some can be Baptist, some can be this,
but this,
John,
this goes back to what we're talking about, though. We're talking about, we got to, with celebrities, whether you're Christian or not, you got to do all things to the lens of the Holy Spirit of the Word of God.
Yeah.
I don't think that it is as simple as, for example, right? And I'm saying this as an example,
Yeah.
not necessarily as an attack. So
Mhm.
please listen to what I'm trying to say.
Oh, I got you.
I don't think it is easy if everyone was just Orthodox or everyone was just Catholic or everyone was just Baptist or everyone was just this, that it becomes as simple as, well, now I know that they have good doctrine.
Mm-hmm.
Because even within those subsets, you have people
it's divided.
who are divided, and ultimately you have people who the enemy is trying to constantly influence, right?
That's
I think
true.
this is why God gives us the empowerment of the Holy Spirit for discernment.
Mhm.
I think it is case by case. I think it becomes that. And I think that's just the nature of living life. Things just aren't as simple as, man, if I just pick up this thing, then everything else will be better. I don't think I don't see that anywhere in the Gospels. I don't see that in terms of, not in terms of the ultimate cross, but in terms of the perfection of life, because life has so many different factors. Like, man, I haven't had my parents pass away.
Yeah.
And so I don't know what the impact of the death of a parent impacts the how I see or view things, or decisions that I make. But there are things in my life that have happened. I've had people self-delete themselves in my life. Right. And so that becomes a passion of mine. I've experienced issues around personally racism. Right. Like, and that impacts certain things. And I think actually, for me personally, I got to kind of step back and I got to realize the world doesn't revolve around me. And in that same breath, God has given me a unique experience and testimony in my ethnicity, my culture, and my nationality, right, as we see in Revelation, to testify to his goodness, that actually I bring something to the kingdom. Mm-hmm. And I say that because you look at someone like Jackie, you look at what she has done in terms of what God, you can argue that her brand is her faith, and her brand is the intersection of faith and her sexuality, right, and her gender, right? I don't see that as a bad thing. I don't see it as a bad thing, right? I don't see someone like a Bizzle, who's a rapper, or even like a Caleb Gordon, who's a rapper, who, man, them cats love Jesus, right? And their brand is faith and fun. Yeah. Right. Bizzle is faith and good doctrine. Right.
I do like Bizzle. I do like
KB is faith at the intersection of contemporary worship and gospel music and hip hop. Right. Like, I don't see that as an issue. In fact, even if your brand is faith and motivational speaking, right? Like, I don't necessarily even see that as an issue, because, man, I wish some more motivational speakers would name God as the source of motivation. Yeah. Right. I do think, however, there are people who use those things for their benefit and not the Lord's, for their glory and not the Lord's. And I will say that even about Christians who don't overtly speak about Jesus. Yeah. A lot of closet Christians in Hollywood and in music who aren't willing to be live fully surrendered to Jesus, and they made their brand, ironically, that I'm a closet Christian. That's a brand, John. So when I think about what you're saying, I just want to push a little bit to think, I don't think it's as simple as, I think there's some truth in what you're saying in terms of, man, there are people who try to make faith a source of income, right? Mm-hmm. And then there are people whose faith is there. Yeah. And they're making money too. Yeah. Right. Like, because money is not the issue. Yeah. No, that's not. It's how it's done. The love of money. Yeah. It's the love. And it's why you were doing the things.
Now, I believe in, personally, whether it be your faith, your art, or whatever, money and success should be a byproduct of how you put into it, in the talent and the passion and the zeal. Yeah. If you're truly someone who, this is my faith, this is what I believe, it influences everything I do, and you push it forward, and you happen to, get success and things off of it, that's fine. I have no issue with that. But the only time I have an issue is when people take it and make it a brand for the source of money, because oftentimes you can tell, because it's reflective in so many different things. Because, like I say, not everyone is like this. Not every big Christian celebrity or mega church has a lot of money and influence and things like that because they're bad. They're being disingenuous. That's not the case for all of them. But a lot of them, in order to reach those peaks, you have to make some kind of compromise. A lot of them tend to do that.
A lot of them do, but not all of them.
Yeah, not all of them. I don't want to be like that guy. Not all of them do that. Yeah. Definitely don't want to say that and be too
Yeah.
critical.
Well, and and now well, the irony being, we are content creators. You're trying to be a filmmaker. I'm trying to become a voice in terms of microphone and this type of content that we're making right now. Like and subscribe if you haven't already.
You know you want to.
But here's the thing for me, right? The irony of this discussion is that, we don't want to be self-righteous. We don't want to be self-righteous in the sense that we both are unapologetically Christian. We have doctrinal disagreements, particularly you being Orthodox, me being more non-denominational. And again, from my Orthodox and Catholic friends, when you hear that, it just means y'all don't believe in nothing. Y'all just out here making it up, right? But no, I genuinely, the word of God truly being the source and root of my foundation, right? For me, regardless, we're both Christian.
Yeah.
And yet we still are making content. And so the irony being, at what point is faith our brand, but not our brand, right? At what point are we unapologetic about Jesus through the content, right? Like, I feel like that question is not just, this is how culture can be, or this is how Christians can be, but actually as us right now, as people are listening to us right now, watching us right now, right? There is still that question that has to be pointed at the log in our eyes.
Yeah.
And so I guess the question being here that I want to kind of leave us on is, and for those who may be listening, for those who are content creators who also Christian, or maybe even not Christian, maybe this advice could be helpful for non-Christians as well.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to content creators who haven't got started yet in terms of this conversation around faith?
I would say, honestly, just go for it. Sometimes, I got to get the right cameras. I got to set up this. I got to know people. I got to do this. Just go for it. Because here's the thing. Anything in life or bad decisions, 9 times out of 10, you made a bad decision and you just jumped right into it. Like, a lot of times we were in sin or doing something wrong. We didn't think twice about it. Like, should I do this? Sometimes we just did it. And sometimes when it comes to things that you're inspired to do, changes to make, just do them. You want to be a rapper, an artist, fashion designer, singer, book writer, whatever. Just go for it and do it. And make the best art or whatever that you can make. Don't try. You can be inspired by people, but don't try to copy nobody. Don't try to be nobody else. Just be you. And if people rock with it, they rock with it. Keep your integrity and just keep pushing and keep going. I'm just starting this stuff. I've been inspired by, the Martin Scorsese's, this George Lucas's, all those people, visionaries. And I think to myself, there's some people out there pushing messages and movies I don't agree with. It's people making things I think could be better. But instead of armchair watching and like, oh, that movie sucks, I could do better than that. Like, anybody who says I could do that, a lot of time person who ain't doing nothing. So when you sit down and just think, go for it. Pray about it. Count the costs of what you're doing. Because if you're going to be a film director, content creator, know how much time you got to put into it. Know how much, editing, software, connections. Make sure you count the cost. And then once you really decide to do it, just go for it. It's not going to look the best at the start. Sometimes it's going to be rough. It's not going to be pretty. But you got to keep doing it. You got to keep going. Most of the people who big and made it struggled. Look, people working out of their basement, didn't have the equipment they need. If you ever get a chance, just look at a documentary about how George Lucas made the first Star Wars movie.
I was going to say, John, I mean,
he was in debt.
For those who are looking right now, right behind John are still boxes me and my wife haven't unpacked from moving. I got my janky setup here, man. You see behind me, I'm in my basement literally right now. So when he's talking, I'm a little testimony to that, man.
Yeah, and you just got to go for it because you never know. And I'm literally walking that as I say. I don't know how big this could all be, but I'm going on the journey and I'm not afraid to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's a simple principle here biblically. If God has put on your heart to create content and you don't actually take the next step you never know what God is going to do and wants to do and will ultimately do through that. I think about this in Abraham. If Abraham never followed Jesus or ultimately God into the calling that he had to go and establish ultimately the nations, he would have used someone else. I really do think God the scripture talks about that. Out of these rocks, I can, call forth a generation, right? Like God is not limited, but he chooses to use us. But if you never allow yourself to be used, if you never allow your gifts to be known, you never know what God can do. And I'm a living testimony of that. As I'm building this community out, like I said, I've been absolutely thrown aback by the amount of support. I don't think me and John are even building the local show right now if I didn't get started and he wasn't seeing what I was doing, because we both had a conversation recently this past week in a production team meeting that basically was, man, we want to be with people who are moving, and we saw each other moving, which then helped us get in alignment about what we want to do with the local show, what we want to do in terms of content. And now we're moving together. Right. And so if you don't think you have the resources or the people around you, you just will not get those things until you start to make moves.
You got to step out and actually try, because you don't know who's watching. You really don't.
None.
You gotta just do it.
Yep. That's good, man.
Yeah.
Well, John, man, this has been an absolute joy, man.
I should start doing these things more often. People ask me to come on their shows all the time.
There you go. And now we're here, man.
Yeah, I've made it. This is a major step, but there is nobody in the world who I'd rather have been the first show I've came on. This is honestly a great man. This is somebody I have a high amount of respect for. I can't say that enough.
Man, that's love, man. I really do appreciate that, man. John, before we head out, go ahead. If you want to give a final word, you can say your final word here.
I'm just like to round that up. Get out there, make something, do something, be something.
Hey, I love it, man. Again, my name is DLW. I am your honorable host of this channel. And if you're liking this content, please like and subscribe and follow both of us on social media. Follow my man, John Morgan. He is killing the movie and film critic stuff, man. And he is about to start killing the film industry here in St. Louis.
We're building.
And so let's build.
We're building. Follow me. We're going to start putting out more content. We're going to start talking about movies, reviewing, editorials. We got it all. We're just getting this off the ground. Come on aboard.
That's good, man. And I'll say the same thing about DLW, man. The stuff that we got behind the scenes prime for y'all is crazy. It's absolutely nuts. And so we're just really excited. The people are starting to see us. People are starting to hear us. The shorts are starting to go a little viral, which is dope. And so people are craving for this content, man. And so we just want to be a living inspiration of the living inspirer.
Amen.
Jesus, man. And so continue to follow our content. Man, this is a good show, brother. I appreciate you.
I can't wait for this to get out there and everybody see this. This is gonna be. I'm excited. This was great. I love this. I love you. I love
you too, man. All right, signing off.
All right, everybody.